Hey there, welcome to Hobie on YouTube, and thanks for watching my video. I recently reviewed this Buck 112 Ranger Sport. If you didn't get a chance to see that video, I'll put a card at the end of this video, so when you're through watching this one, you can go watch that one if you'd like. But in that review, I came to the conclusion that I really do like the knife. Thought it was a little overpriced, and I did have one problem with it, and that is the micarta scales were very spotted or mottled, and it was because of excess resin on the scales. So originally I was going to take the scales off and sand them and reinstall them, but when I tried to remove them, I stripped out one of these little torque screws. I think they must be using, like red screw lock on there or something. I just couldn't get it out. So what I ended up doing was putting painter's tape over these black anodized aluminum bolsters and little bits of it over these anodized torque screws, and I just sanded it on board, and it made a huge difference. So I think it looks a lot better now. I think this is something that Buck could do a little better before they put the scales on the knife and send them out. One thing I discovered in doing that I hadn't noticed in the first video, so I wanted to share it with you, was the scales front and back aren't the exact same color. So take a look at this one and you can see that it has more of a brownish hue, right? This one, definitely more greenish. And if you look at the back of the knife, you can see that they're not the same color really. So I think that's a little careless. Does it affect the functionality of the knife? No, of course not. Is it irritating? Yes, it is to me, because this is a $140 knife retail, and for that I just would like matched pieces of micarta, thank you. So anyway, I'm definitely getting off track, but I did like the knife, and I thought, hey, I'll get a classic Buck 112 to compare it to, because when I was a kid I had a 110 Hunter. I really liked the knife. It was super sturdy and reliable, but it was heavy, big, clunky, and I decided, hey, the Rangers might be the nicer knife for me. So I like this knife, but I wanted to try the original. So that's what I did. I went to Buck's website so I could get their web exclusive nickel bolstered drop point blade Buck 112. And that's available for $79.99 on their website, which is a little bit of a premium over their regular Buck 112 Ranger. The regular ones have a clip point blade and brass bolsters, but I wanted the nickel silver and the drop point because I thought that was a little more special. By the way, just a tip, I put it in my cart, and Buck was offering like a 10 off coupon, but I couldn't get it to work, so I just left it in my cart. And after a few days, they emailed me with a 20% off coupon. So that paid for my shipping and my state of North Carolina sales tax, and still there's a little bit left over there to knock off of that $80 price tag. So I got the whole thing for less than 80 bucks, taxed and shipped, and I'm very happy with that. I think it's a good value proposition. So they come with a beautiful sheath. The Ranger Sports do not come with a sheath, and I guess that's because they do have a pocket clip. But these come with a sheath. The sheath is made in Mexico. Buck makes no secrets about that. Their knife is made in America. Both of these knives are made in the United States. Both have a lifetime warranty, but the one that comes with the sheath, that is made in Mexico. It is specifically made for the 112, so it fits the knife very well. It's an excellent sheath, nice thick stiff leather, really well finished, well stitched. If I had my druthers, it would be designed a little differently. I would rather have the snap be on the belt loop and the top just open. That way I could put it on and off over my belt without taking my belt off and just grab the knife when I needed it. But I understand why they do it this way. This is a much more secure carry system than what I just described. This has its origins as a hunting knife, so if you're out in the woods scrambling through the thicket and catching branches and things, this will never pull off of your belt. The chances of the knife falling out of the sheath with that snap are very low. So a very secure carry system. So here's the knife. And again, this is $79.99. The regular Buck 112 Rangers with the brass bolsters, and the clip point blades currently retail for $64.99 on Buck's website. So you're paying a premium of about $15 for this knife, if I didn't say that already. But I do like the knife. If you see small scratches and fingerprints and things, those are mine. Didn't come to me this way, but I will say the knife did come starved for oil with black polishing compound down in the joint and around the tang of the blade. And I've heard that complaint before on Buck knives. So maybe they need to kind of tighten up how they clean up their knives and send them out. But as far as the fit and finish of the knife, it's mostly excellent with just one problem, and I'll go over that. Before I do, this knife does come with the African ebony scales, which I think are just beautiful. I think Buck does a great job with that. You know, ebony doesn't always have to be jet black. Often it has reds and browns in it, and I really like this piece because it says, hey, that's a piece of wood. It's got some character to it. Ebony, by the way, is a fantastic wood to make knife handles out of. It's one of the hardest woods in the world. It doesn't dent or chip or crack easily. It's so dense, as a matter of fact, it will sink in water. So it's kind of expensive, it's kind of exotic, and it's kind of rare. I think it's a beautiful choice for the nickel silver. I like the contrast of the silver and the black, or the dark browns. Mostly excellent fit and finish. Here are these nickel silver domed pins. They're very precise. There are no snags. Center pin there, some to hold on the handles, I guess. I can't feel any transitions between the scales and the bolsters. By the way, these aren't really traditional bolsters. On this model and the 110, Hunter, Buck uses kind of a monobody, unibody kind of approach where the whole side here is milled or sintered out of one piece of nickel silver, so it's not like a bolster on a liner. I really like that. That attracts me to the knife. I think it makes for a very, very sturdy construction. Can't feel any transitions. You know, it's very well done. Smooth all over, nicely rounded edges. Nice fit here in the back. The blade is fairly well centered. You can see how thick that blade is to the point. But here's the thing that bothers me a little bit. The spring, the lock bar for the back lock is proud, and quite a bit so. You can see it, and you can feel it, and it's only going to attract, you know, grit and dust and things, and work its way into the knife. So, you know, I just think with all the years of experience Buck has in making these, they've been making these for over 50 years now, that's something that they could get right. Is it a deal killer for me? No, of course not. Not especially with the deal that I got the knife for. It's a great value proposition, as I said, but it is not perfect, and it does bother me a little bit. Now, it's not so proud in the open position. I mean, just slightly. That doesn't bother me. If it were like that in the closed position, I wouldn't even be mentioning it, but it is a little more proud than that in the closed position. Otherwise, the action of the knife is really nice, and the lockup is just super sound. So let's just talk about the Buck 112 model for just a second. Whether you get the Ranger Sport, more modern, more expensive one, or a classic like this, whether it's the nickel silver drop point or the brass with the clip point blades, they're all going to be 4 1/4 inches in the closed position, which I think is just a great size for my medium-sized hands anyway. It's very comfortable in the hand the way they've built this knife. No pocket clip, very nicely rounded edges and things. The blades are all going to be 3 inches, whether they're clip point or drop point, and they're all going to be 0.12 inches thick. So just shy of 1/8 of an inch thick, and the drop point stays pretty thick all the way to the point. It is hollow ground. The grinds on both of the knives that I've bought are coarse, but even, and both of the knives came out of the box exceedingly sharp. So here's the tang stamp on this knife, and it reads Buck USA, and I believe that's Buck's custom shop anvil logo there. So you do get the custom shop logo on this knife. It does not say 112 on it anywhere, so there is no model number, and it does not indicate what kind of steel it is. Well, you can get this knife, the nickel silver drop point model, on their website in either 420HC, 420 high carbon, which is their standard steel, and that's what I got. It's $79.99. Or you can get S30V, which is a more modern, higher grade steel. And those models cost $119.99, so $40 more for the better steel. So you would just have to decide whether it was worth it or not to pay up for the better steel. I was okay getting this in the 420HC because I've had that before with Buck knives and have no complaints. All their knives have the proprietary Paul Bowes heat treat, which is supposedly one of the best in the industry. And so I think they all sharpen and carry a really good edge. I've never been unhappy with Buck's normal steel. I do have the S30V on the Ranger. That's the Ranger Sport. That's the only way they come, and that's why they're even more expensive at $139.99. But one difference I wanted to point out, these only come with the clip point blade. I wish they came with a drop point. That would be my dream knife from Buck, would be this modern build with the aluminum frame, with the S30V steel, with a clip, thumb stud, and the drop point blade. Because I personally, I just prefer the drop point blade. And we'll talk about clip versus drop point here in a second. But one difference I wanted to point out is if you do get the S30V steel, you're going to get a laser etch. Instead of an embossing on the tang, you're going to get a laser etch. On this one it reads Buck 112 Plus USA. And they do indicate the steel on the back here, S30V with the Boss heat treat. So let's just talk about clip point versus drop point real quick. I think maybe I'll put a link to a video of a guy here on YouTube that did an excellent job, carving with both of them. He's better with a knife than I could ever be. But I think the argument comes down to, what are you going to use the knife for? Which blade is better? Well, what do you intend to use it for? This originally was a hunting knife, so I think the clip point blade with the upswept edge and the finer point is probably better for rendering animals, skinning and things like that. I prefer just the aesthetics of the drop point and the fact that it does have a much thicker tip that I don't really have to worry about breaking off. So I think this one would be better for doing fine detail work with that point, but you may have to sharpen the point more because you're going to be relying on it all the time. Again, they're both 3 inches long, but to me the drop point looks bigger. That's just because it has more mass, I guess. You can see the drop point does have a nail nick, quite generous one. Originally, the 112 Ranger, I think when they first brought them out over 50 years ago, had black micarta scales and no nail nick. So I think if you could find one like that, it would probably cost quite a bit more, as it's probably collectible. I also think that the may not really kind of show up on camera what I'm talking about, but I think the Ranger Sport looks bigger. And it's not. They're both 4 1/4 closed, but because of the way this one is, built and rounded, I think it just looks smaller than this more blockish modern. So this is modern construction, where all the pieces are precisely made and then brought together and just assembled, just screwed together. This is more of kind of like the old traditional, build it somewhat by hand, fit the pieces together best you can, and then grind them and polish them all smooth. So it does definitely have, a much more rounded look to it. It does make it more comfortable in the hand, and that may not be all that fair of a comparison because, this knife does have a pocket clip as well. This knife is heavy. On Buck's website, they say it has a weight of 5.6 ounces. They give that weight to all of their 112 Rangers, the classic ones, whether they're finger grooved or brass or nickel silver or clip point or drop point. They say they're 5.6 ounces, but when I weighed this, I came up with 6.14 ounces. So substantially more, half an ounce more than what they say on the website. So we'll just call this 6 ounces. And Buck says their Ranger Sport with the aluminum frame weighs 3.9 ounces. Now when I weighed it, I came up with 3.99, so again a little more, so we'll call this one 4 ounces. But at 6 ounces versus 4 ounces, this one is 50% heavier. But again, at $140 versus $80, this one is 50% more so in cost. So again, just some of the differences. I do think that this knife is attractive in its own way. It just kind of has a modern, utilitarian, all business look to it. But personally, I kind of like the classic look of this knife. It's a very sturdy looking knife, but it's also sort of elegant and, in my opinion, really a much prettier knife. I'd like to close this video by showing you something my son got me a while back. A Buck Knives belt buckle. He said he got it on eBay for a song. I think it's really cool. It's designed to go on like a 2-inch belt. It was made exclusively for Buck Knives and sold through Smoky Mountain Knife Works, it looks like. But here you can see it says 4 generations of knife makers, Buck. And let me see if I can get this right. I believe this is Hoyt, the founder. This is Al, his son, who really kind of transformed Buck Knives into a business. That'd be Chuck Buck, grandson and great-grandson. CJ Buck, who is currently the CEO of the company. But that's pretty cool. Here's their logo. It's Cutler at the anvil. It could be Hoyt there with the cap on. And down here is a likeness of their iconic 110 Hunter in really pretty good detail. It's got the rivets and the nail nick and everything. I'm going to do a video on these type of belt buckles. I don't really collect them, but somehow I have found myself to have 4 or 5 of them. And collecting belt buckles was a big thing back in the 80s and 90s. And so I want to talk about these type of belt buckles and, just their history. So stay tuned for that. I hope you've enjoyed this comparison of 2 new offerings from Buck of their classic 112 Ranger. Thanks for watching.